It is Tuesday morning, the 17th of September. Half of September is gone, the other half is left. And we are left. We are still here. The we is myself, Theophilus van Rensburg-Linster, sitting 10,000 kilometers away from someone else who's called Terence Martin. Terry, good morning to you.
Good morning, Theo. Good morning, listeners.
Thank you so very, very much, Terry, as always, for being here and for joining us in this particular space. Terry has faithfully shared with us through a series of ideas around something that he says it gets repeated over and over. He calls it a fractal idea. I want you to keep that word in mind because it's going to come up again. He's not a broken record when he says that. It's just that it's a very, very important recurring concept and idea that if we get to know it and understand it, it would unlock for us the joy of discovering that which is meaningful in order for us to live a meaningful life. Not be surprised when disorder comes, to constantly be aware that even if there's order, don't be over confident that it will prevail. But do have hope that at some point there'll be reorder. Jeremiah 29 is where Terence will open up this chapter on this fine morning. For those of you who are joining us, thank you so very much for spending your time with us on this wonderful morning. You are in the fifth connection. The time has just gone after 7 o'clock on this wonderful morning. Very welcome. Terry, over to you, my brother.
Thanks, Theo. We are in a very interesting section of the story as it unfolds across 52 chapters. And the fractal idea that runs through the sections that I've highlighted since the beginning of the series carries the idea that life is filled with encounters. Life is a series of encounters. And we need to make those encounters qualitative encounters because those encounters follow a pattern. The pattern is order, disorder, reorder. It's the New Testament idea of this iterative pattern. Life, death, resurrection. It's an idea that arises in Genesis chapter 2 and 3 and goes all the way to Revelation 21 and 22. And if we attend properly to this pattern of what's happening in our lives in terms of order, disorder, and a reordered life, we would learn some very interesting lessons. And so we are in a section of the text where the writer is making a journal entry about the demise of a covenant culture. The covenant culture is the Hebrew people. And he's the credible witness to the demise as well as the rise of this civilization. Israel must die, he says, in order to rise. You're going into captivity, you're going to feel the bite of captivity. Some of you are going to die there. Many of you will die there. But I'm going to bring a generation back to the land after 70 long years. But in this section of chapter 29 of the autobiography of the writer, the prophet, he writes a letter to those in exile. Because you see, letters are fascinating artifacts, aren't they? When last have you written a letter? It was Ricardo Piglia who said the following: to write a letter is to send a message to the future. To write a message is to send a letter to the future. Because to speak of the present with an addressee who is not there, knowing nothing about how that person is, while we write, and above all, later, while reading over what we have written, the correspondence is the utopian form of conversation because we wax eloquent. And in a sense, it annihilates the present and turns the future in the only possible place for dialogue. That is what makes letters so fascinating. Even emails, snail mail, email, every other kind of mail. They are fascinating artifacts. And so we're going to see in this chapter of the story, in this episode, how that sending messages to the future carries risks and carries great risks. In these 9 verses that were read in your hearing, the challenge from these 9 lines of the story is, are we learning to live life in a home away from home? Are you learning how to live your life in a home away from home? We sing that song, "This world is not my home. I'm just a passing through. My treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue." And we sing that song with such verve and such passion that we almost want to cut ourselves loose from living in the midst of reality of the real workaday world in which we live, with all its anguish and pain and joys and disappointments. We want to live in the sweet old by and by. We shall sing on that beautiful shore. What about living here? So little emphasis on that, isn't it? But the prophet writes a letter challenging those in captivity to learn to live their lives in that home in captivity in Babylon, which is a home away from home. Make your home away from home. And as I said in a previous message, if you've never had to leave home in a violent way, you will not know the pain that leaving home inflicts on your soul. Many of us have gotten married and we've left home with great permissions from our parents. It's wonderful. It's time for you to go. Time for you to start a family, have kids. But to be ripped away from home is a very different kind of challenge. And so there are 3 things I want you to take note of in the biblical text as we look at learning to live life in a home away from home. And the first is, it comes up in it's actually highlighted in verse 5 and verse number 6. But from verse 1 to verse 6, the challenge for the people of God living in a home away from home was optimize for normalcy. Optimize for normalcy of living, because your survival depends on it. When I left home, it was the first time I would ever leave the home at age 23. A bit late for me, a bit late for some. Some leave home very early. Early teens, they are thrust out of the home. Late teens. I left home for the first time at age 23. And what a shock to my system that was. Never lived outside of the home up until that point. Israel is ripped away from the familiar. And she's put into the unfamiliar. She's placed in a home away from home. And has to face making a home in a foreign culture. They are strangers in a foreign land. I remember a song that my mom taught me. I am a stranger here within a foreign land. My home is far away upon a golden strand. Ambassadors to be of life beyond the sea. I'm here a witness for my king. But how do I conduct my life in the here and now? Nebuchadnezzar in verse number 1 of chapter 29 had taken into exile from Jerusalem people, priests, and prophets, and he's taken them all into exile. And together with that, King Jeconiah, the queen mother, was the only queen in Israel, and she was a usurper, right? The usurping queen. She was the illegitimate queen to sit on the throne. The eunuchs, the officials of Judah, the craftsmen, the workers had departed from Jerusalem. What does Jeremiah do? He sits down and he writes a letter. And in that letter that goes by the hand of Eleazar, the son of Shaphan, and Gemariah, the son of Hilkiah, it comes to those in captivity. And this is what the letter says: to all in exile. And it's read in the hearing of Jeremiah. Build, it's read in the hearing of those in captivity, rather. Build houses, live in them, plant, eat, take wives, have your sons and daughters get married. Take wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage, and bear sons and daughters. Multiply and do not decrease. In other words, optimize for normalcy. Get on with your lives. Don't sit, soak, and sour. We know that song. I think it was Boney M. that sang that song, By the Rivers of Babylon, where we sat down and we remembered Zion because we wept. We're in a home away from home. Optimize for normalcy. Get on with your lives. That's a great challenge when you have left home, to optimize for normalcy. The feeling of getting ripped out of the familiar is a very unnerving reality. But they are challenged. The people of God in the midst of this order are challenged to optimize for order. Optimize for normalcy. In verse 7, seek the welfare of the city. City of Babylon with its hanging gardens, where I've sent you into exile, the Lord says, and pray to the Lord on its behalf. For in its welfare you will find your welfare. In other words, in its shalom, you will find shalom. That's the word in the Hebrew text. The welfare of the city will mean your welfare. So pray for the welfare of the city. For us here in Cape Town, are we praying for the welfare of the city? For CEO on the other side of the microphone in Stockholm, are you praying for the welfare of the city? Because its welfare will have great impact, positive impact for you. Optimize for normalcy. Get on with your day-to-day living. Seek the welfare of the city. For thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel. Now here he comes to the third point. Optimize for normalcy. Seek the welfare of the city. And the third pointer, while you are living and making a living in a home away from home, block out fake news and fake news mongers. Here's the idea of fake news again. What's fake news? Error, untruth, or half-truth. We live in a day where fake news is rampant. And you can doctor a video to say anything you wanted to say. AI allows you to do that. Digital platforms allows you to push an agenda which could be totally false. And people would not know the difference. That's why it says in verse 8, do not let your prophets and your diviners who are among you deceive you. And do not listen to the dreams that they dream. Your fake news mongers are the 21st century counterparts of what Jeremiah is warning against. God, through the prophet, is warning people against. Don't believe fake news. Don't believe fake news mongers. For it is a lie that they are prophesying to you in my name. They are coming to you in my name with a false message. You see, disinformation is a grave problem today. And what should be done about it? Well, some people say Facebook needs to block fake news. And there was one point where British newspapers were offering advice to users of how to block, right? Block out fake news and spot fake news. They were saying things like, be skeptical of the headlines. Investigate the source. Check the evidence, and so on, and so on, and so on. Well, if we as the people of God don't learn how to truthify, how to suss out truth from error, if we don't have a process for doing that,
Also, South African time for now until the clocks get changed. And thank you, Terry, for your time, my brother, this morning.
you're welcome to.